Well, welcome everybody. My name's Adam Petrikoff. I'm the managing partner of VR Business Brokers here in Charlotte, North Carolina, and I'm super excited to have Michael Stier along with us today. As we're in the month of January, a lot of us are looking at our new plans, our new goals, our strategic outlines, and I thought it was really fitting to have Michael on today to help us kick off our third year of doing these webinars to help inform business owners about best practices, strategies they should think about while they're running their business with an eye towards an eventual exit. At some point, we will all exit our business. So the more we can do to help educate you on things you should be thinking about now, next year, next 5 years, that's really the goal of this Contemplating Your Exit webinar series. So like I said, I'm super happy to have Michael on. Michael is not only a friend, I've known him for many years. He's a avid tennis nut like I am. He's a colleague. We work in the space together, and we're also serve on a board together, XPX, which is the Exit Planning Exchange chapter of Charlotte. So Michael, welcome. Thank you for being here. And I will not bungle your background, and I'm going to let you talk a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Well, thank you, Adam. I really appreciate you inviting me to be part of this webinar series. Your intro is, I think, fantastic. You do a great service in informing business owners about things to think about way in advance about how they start to plan for their exits. So kudos to you for doing this, and I appreciate being part of it. Background, you want to go to background. So my current gig here, as you'll see, is that I'm the area president in the Carolinas for FocusCFO. FocusCFO is very simply one of the leading providers of fractional CFO services, in this part of the country, from the upper Midwest all the way down to the Southeast. And we work with small and mid-sized business owners, roughly in the maybe $2 to $30 million range, and helping them have greater, greater performance and success in their business, and ultimately get them ready for that eventual exit, as you spoke about there. As far as my background, I've been involved with Focus, a little less than 2 years right now. I am a former business owner myself. I founded, grew, and ran, along with some partners, a business here in Charlotte for almost 18 years. It was a fintech, financial services related business. And took it through the entire life cycle, from early stage bootstrapping all the way up to its higher growth phase, and then ultimately taking it to an exit. And in our particular case, it was a strategic sale, or a sale to a strategic buyer. But that's my particular journey along the way.
Well, great. Well, and I want to point out in the middle of this slide here, Michael is a certified exit planning advisor, otherwise known as a CEPA. And there are not that many of them really in the greater Charlotte area. And this is really a designation and that Michael has spent the time, energy, and effort and money to make sure that he is someone who can help business owners. And so you're getting a double, triple whammy here with Michael. And what I wanted to point out to many people is that Michael, probably having sold businesses before, now having been trained as a CEPA, probably looks back on his business daily and says, oh, I wish I had done this. I wish I had done that. So, you get a different perspective. And I think we're all wiser when we go through an acquisition or a transition. And Michael, I'm assuming that is the case with you.
Oh, absolutely. And I would say that about every aspect of building and growing the business. I look back and, I learned a lot of lessons the hard way, as most of us do. And perhaps I have more battle scars than the average bear, but, I wish I had more advisors when I was running the business, so I could have, avoided a few of those scars.
Well, great. Well, let's jump in a little further. And before we do, I just want to remind everybody, feel free to submit any questions in the Q&A or in the chat. We've already gotten a welcome from William. Thanks for the welcome there, William. We're glad you're here. And let's keep moving this forward here. Let's talk a little bit about how you approach clients from your perspective, Michael, to day to day.
Well, that's a pretty open-ended question there. We we typically get introduced into our clients, either from one of their their current trusted advisors, or maybe just, a practitioner that they know, their banker, their CPA, their attorney, whatever, into it. And it's a great question because, often you say, well, how do owners know that they need outside help? To hear, some voices of experience from outside people outside their business. And, some business owners are aware, and they've proactively have reached out, or they've been talking to a fellow owner, a colleague, a friend, who themselves have had a good experience with outside advisors, whatever it may be, a business coach or fractional executive or whatever. And because of that positive experience to hear from others, they proactively reach out and recognize, hey, I probably could benefit from some of this help themselves. Other times, I often get, and probably half the time or more, I get introduced to an owner from, a vendor, a practitioner, their banker, who recognizes and hears just in their engagement with their clients that, hey, they're struggling. They could use some help. They may need some help. They may be open to it, and they just make that connection. And then, we just typically have an intro conversation. I ask them to tell me about their businesses. I share all my war stories, and I have plenty of them. And then ultimately, I talk a little bit about how we at Focus have helped other business owners along the way. And by the way, we've probably have helped probably over 1,000 businesses at this point in Focus's tenure. And usually, it just kind of resonates with them, and they start seeing the picture going forward.
So there's something on this slide that really attracts my attention, because I hear this and see this a lot with business owners. We're out there talking with business owners. We work with other professionals that are already doing the same thing. And that really is this word stuck. Help me understand, are you there to help people, if they're content being a $3 to $5 million business, or they're just sort of stuck in their ways? Help me understand how you go about helping people get unstuck. And then the next question to follow up on that is, do they recognize that they're stuck? How do they recognize they're stuck to be able to say, hey, I need some outside help to really help me grow and get this business to the next level?
Okay. You froze for just a quick minute here, but I think I heard most of the question. Stuck, I think, is a great generic term for a slew of frustrations that owners are experiencing, at least all the ones that I've spoken with. It could be that they're stuck in the weeds of operating their business day to day and really can't get themselves raised up enough to be able to work on the business instead of just being consumed by being in the business. Feeling stuck, feeling that the business is stuck at either the current revenue level, the same number of customers, profit margins, whatever it is, they can't get it moving forward and growing it. Sometimes they feel stuck because they don't have the information they need to be able to understand where their business is, make decisions, and see a path forward, what they should double down on, what they should get rid of, clients that are profitable, clients that are not profitable. All those things kind of get into being stuck and not understanding a path forward, or just being stuck and not being able to implement the changes that they know they need to make to the business, but either organizationally or experience level, they just don't have what it takes to actually implement and get those things going forward. Or they're so consumed or have problems with cash flow that the cash flow is managing them and how they operate the business instead of them managing cash flow and making it work for them in order to be able to invest in the business and propel it forward. So it's really kind of a broad spectrum of ills or frustrations that owners have. And coming in both with any of the CFOs from my team and even myself, as we get involved with these business owners, we start showing them that there is a path forward. We can bring some outside experience in, which is typically our CFOs, myself, and help them plot out going forward, help them start to see the business a little bit better, give them some bandwidth to pull themselves out of the business, make recommendations on where they should shore up the business, help them improve cash flow so they even just have the resources to be able to move the ball down the field. all those things come into play. Introduce other potential service providers or another advisor if we see that there's a real lack there, a real gap in what they're doing. So it's not a simple prescription. It's really highly dependent on what's going on in that particular business and with that particular owner. And we just adapt to the needs of the business and where it is at that particular stage and help them move forward.
Well, great. Well, let's dig in a little further. Let's move this forward here. So this is sort of what I would say a key graphic, stepping stones. I've heard you talk about this before. I want to let you sort of give a high level. The next slide, we'll dig a little deeper into this. And just for those of you wondering, we're happy to make this PowerPoint available so you don't have to take pictures of the slides, or we can send you out the video as well. We want you to focus on what Michael's actually talking about here. So Michael, you want to jump into this graphic?
Sure. We find that this graphic is a useful metaphor or a useful framework in talking with advisors about the different aspects of where they need to improve their business. And from a marketing perspective, we even tie it in. You can see the tagline underneath our logo about climb the mountain. It's really all about getting in there and helping owners start to move up this value pyramid, as we call it, with their business. The foundational level is the basic blocking and tackling. It's your financial reporting, it's your bookkeeping, it's your processes, your HR policies, all of those things. About half the time when I go into a client, that foundational level is, decent shape. Could use a little help, but not bad. Other times, the other half of the time, it's, I don't know, I call it a hot freaking mess. And we need to spend time helping them clean that up. But then it's really moving up those layers. I mean, I would view the bottom two layers as tactical, the top two layers being a little bit more strategically focused. So even tactical, being able to understand what is your cash flow? What is your AR AP cycles? How is cash coming in and out of the business? How do you manage that better? How do you start forecasting it so that you feel like you're comfortable enough to make decisions about, hey, I want to invest in a new location or a new product line or a new truck, whatever it is. Will the cash flow be there to support it? Creating budgets within different departments, depending on the size of the business. A lot of times they just don't have a good budgeting process. Things like that, and helping them just move the operational forward. That's what we call the health level of business. And the other parts, then we start getting into more, as that gets stabilized, it's in better shape, then we also start working with them on kind of the more strategic. Where do we want to grow? How do we want to grow? Do you have the information to decide, do we want to double down on a particular business line, different product service? Certain types of customers, which ones are more profitable? A lot of times they don't even have that information to be able to see where they should invest and where they maybe should de-invest or divest some things out of their business. So that's really what that growth piece of it, and understanding what perhaps will be the capital needs behind that. So, if it's a capital intensive business, how do we set up working lines of capital or other financing to get it in? If it's a more of a services business and it's just people, how do you make sure you line up incoming revenue with expenses that are coming into this right now? For example, I was signing up a new client right this week and they happen to be a nonprofit, but it doesn't really matter. Business operation. Their budget, their operating revenue coming into it is going to triple in the next 18 months, but they got way out over their skis as far as expanding their expense base, their footprint, their operations before all that additional revenue was starting to come in, and they almost crashed and burned the entire organization. And we're kind of helping them out. So we try to work with them to make sure that, their investments are syncing with the revenue, and it's kind of all in step along the way. And that's really what I would say, from a growth strategy perspective. And then, I can't think of a business owner, even if the reason they brought us in had nothing to do with them exiting. I always have these conversations. Ultimately, as you said, we all ultimately exit from our business. So start getting them to start thinking about, as you're doing here with this webinar, start thinking about what is their plans? What are their goals? Is the business prepared? Is it ready? Is it attractive? If it's not, what makes it attractive? Start having those conversations because, as if you're not completely ready, it could take 3-5 years or longer to get a business ready and attractive where you can get full market value. So it's that full spectrum.
And that's a great segue. We're going to dig into these a little further on the next slide here. But, Michael, I'm sort of the caboose. I'm at the end. Hopefully the business owners out there have done a lot of this work, the foundational work to put yourself, your business, your company in a position to have a successful exit. And I can tell you, it takes about 30 seconds for a buyer to look at your business and tell where you are in terms of the saleability and the readiness to be acquired. Very easy to tell. And so one of the things I always tell people as we move into this next slide here is start looking at your business with a different lens, with a different hat. Put on your buyer hat. Imagine you're going to buy your business. Imagine you're going to think about your new strategy this year as the buyer of your business. You're going to make different investments, different decisions, different priorities, whether you're 1, 3, or 5 years away, if you look at it from that different lens. So I always tell people that, I come at the end. I can't fix if your foundation and some of these other things aren't as strong as you would like them to be, if it's overly reliant or dependent upon you, the owner, and key employees and key vendors. So doing this work up front is hard. And it takes time. It doesn't happen in a weekend, and it takes some outside advisors, and it takes people to sort of push and prod and cajole to get you to move forward. But I can tell you, being on the end, the benefits are just so significant. A same business that's prepared versus unprepared can go for 30, 50, 70% more for the same cash flow business. So, Mike, you just want to briefly touch in here. We're already moving along on the time here. You just want to touch on a couple of these different categories from the prior slide here.
Well, I want to echo with what you just said. For those of us who've been through the CEPA training, a key element to that strategy is readiness. Regardless of if a business owner is even thinking about selling it, in the near future or far future or not, it doesn't really matter. Having your business always ready to be sold, meaning that if somebody came in unsolicited and wanted to take a look at your business, if you were ready to have those conversations, to open up the Komodo and show it to somebody, you will just be running a much better business. It will almost automatically, the people will be running better. You'll probably have better margins. You'll have better operations because you are ready. You've gone through the mental and physical actions it takes to be ready and run it like a real business that's growing value versus what we typically call a lifestyle business, where it's just coming along and they're milking it. So I completely agree with you. And it takes years. I had one prospective client. It was a really nice trucking distribution business, 14 million in revenue. It tripled in size in 5 years. It was going great. And I looked the owner in the eye and go, look at your business right now. Would you come in and buy this? And he took a second, looked back at me and go, hell no. Right? Because it was completely dependent on him. If he wasn't there that day, the business would fall apart. And it was ridiculous. So we told him it was going to take time, 3 to 5 years at a minimum. Think about that. But at least you'll have something that you can retire on at the end of that day versus, closing the door and leaving if you can't come in every day. So, that's kind of where it is. And I don't have to read through all the details of these layers. People who are looking at the screen can see that, but it just gives you an idea. What levels 1 and 2, foundational health, is really more tactical. It's just about having good basic business operations. And then 3 and 4 is more about, what after a potential buyer comes in, it just does the initial sniff tests to even see if this is a viable business. Do you have can you provide financials? Are the financials accurate? Are they timely? Did they tell me anything? Can you show me how your client's performing, what the cash flow forecast is? Are those cash flows predictable? Those are the basic things that a buyer comes in and kind of evaluates, as right off the bat. And that could take a few minutes before they sniff that out. But then to really understand what the ongoing risk is to the business, meaning if I buy this, what's the risk to those existing cash flows? What's the risk to continuing to grow the cash flows? It's really layers 3 and 4 that all come into play. to do that. And that comes into, from a little bit more of a deeper dive due diligence by the owner, by the potential buyer, if they're even interested in all that. And so that's what we mean by being ready. If you have all these layers in pretty good shape and you can demonstrate that to a buyer, right? You can put down the documents, you can put down the analyses, you can put down the forecast and walk them through it and explain it, and it's understandable, then you have a valuable business.
Yeah, and I just want to add, from our perspective, when we're talking with prospective clients, people that want to know the value of their business or what's the market like, what are they ready to potentially consider an exit, we focus initially on really the financials. And I would tell you, there's just a real basic barometer, sort of a line that we look at. If we request tax returns, P&Ls, balance sheets, and if we get them within, I'd say half the time, we get them within 24 hours. The other half, it may take 1 to 2 weeks. That's the first sign, right, sure, that, hey, how is this business run? Now, yes, people are busy. I totally get it. The other thing that we notice right away is, do the P&Ls and the tax returns and all the numbers actually match? And the answer is usually, it's probably about 2/3 of the time they do. So we instantly can see that maybe they don't have all their financial foundation truly tied up, because things should be connecting P&Ls to tax returns, et cetera. Obviously, there could be cash and accrual adjustments, et cetera, but you can tell pretty early on from our perspectives. So just want to share that. One of the things, we just got a question, and I'm going to let you take a stab at it, Michael. You having a technology background, is, how do you value, where does IP fit into these equations? Where does your intellectual property fit into the overall foundation and value from your perspective on the business?
It depends on the business, but it could be pretty strong. And like you said, you kind of let it in with a technology business. A lot of times there is IP as part of that has a lot of value to the business beyond just your cash flows and your customer relationships. My prior business was one of those, because we had built, a pretty, innovative, I would think, technology platform that really enabled us to deliver the services we did. So in our case, the buyer was not just buying our customers and our cash flows and our relationships, but they were buying this platform, which they can then leverage on top of what they were doing. In other businesses, it really just is about the customer relationships and the revenues and being able to drive that. So it depends, but for CEPAs, we all talk about, what drives value, and it's really, the 4 C's. And what do we talk about the 4 C's, right? It's the different capitals. It's your customer capital, right? And we can get into the details of that. It's your structural capital, right? And a lot of times, that is your processes, your internal systems, your employees. Is that all straight along the way? But the other capitals have to do with, market reputation, outside stuff, but also what's your IP? And all those come into play. And again, very different from business to business to business.
Yeah, and I'll answer in a slightly different manner. I think your IP has tremendously more value if the foundation of your business is solid. And I think you will get a premium for your IP if they know that you are not the business, that you have good management in place, you don't have customer concentration, you have all the things, you sort of have your house in order. I think that's when you're going to see premiums paid for IP. Well, let's move on here, because we got a lot of other stuff to talk about here. Michael, as I continue to talk to you, I'm always, surprised and amazed at, the word CFO, the definition is really expanded. You guys do a lot more strategically. Talk a little bit about just what you've been able to do with some of your clients moving forward.
I throw this slide up a lot when I do introductory calls, either with prospective clients or either other business partners, as an example of just some of the kind of client situations we go into and kind of, some of the value add. But the most interesting reaction I get to this slide is not about what we did, necessarily like the standard CFO stuff. They're like, yeah, all right, we get that. We kind of expected that from you. It's the better reactions. I didn't think CFOs do this kind of stuff. And that's really the intriguing part. And when I mentioned that, really what I talked about a lot here is things that around assisting on transition, right? If a business is transitioning from, one generation to the next, or from the current owner to the internal management team, or just helping to get out of that, raising capital from investors. Those kind of things, typically most owners don't necessarily ascribe to something that a CFO would do. Another big thing is EOS implementation. For those who don't know the term EOS, stands for Entrepreneurial Operating System. It's basically a basic methodology for getting stuff done in your business. Started by, popularized by the book Traction by Gino Wickman. It's a great methodology. It's kind of simple but effective methodology for smaller mid-sized businesses to get into an operating rhythm where they, it helps them just get stuff done. It's a simple way of driving accountability within your organization and eliminating all the noise that typically distracts people from getting the important stuff done. And we're big advocates of that. And so when we come in and we're asked to take a look at, hey, why is my business not performing as well as it should be? Or we feel stuck. How do we get unstuck? A lot of times it's just about their internal, how they go about things. Or who's in place, or can they actually execute on their plans? And we see a lot of gaps and a lot of weaknesses in that. We personally, there's a number of methodologies out there, and any good methodology is better than not having any methodology. So I will say that right off the bat. We just happen to like EOS because of its simplicity and it's highly effective. To the point where we learned that ourselves. When I joined Focus, I realized Focus adopted an EOS internally, and several years ago. And it is not a coincidence that if you look at our growth curve within our own business, that inflection point where it really kind of started to accelerate up was very coincident with implementing EOS within our platform.
And I got to admit, when I saw this slide, when you initially sent it to me, I scratched my head. I know what EOS is. I've seen it out there, and I was a little surprised that you as CFOs are really going in and implementing it. And actually, when I thought about it, it makes a lot of sense to have the CFO involved. They have a unique perspective, have a unique seat in the organization. And so I think it's fantastic. And I will tell you definitively, having implemented EOS in businesses and seeing it, that will get the absolute attraction of a buyer's attention. 100%. That is when you start showing that you've implemented and have systems and processes. That's where you start to really help you get a higher multiple and a premium for your business. So really, really important. Okay, let's move on here a little bit. You talk about different relationships, and one of the things that I've noticed, I own my own business. I've owned several businesses. I grew up in a family business. I work with business owners all the time. I've been part of peer groups. I'm a big believer in networking and having relationships with other professionals throughout this industry and city. It can be lonely as a business owner. And talk a little bit about why having this partner, this relationship, and exposing you to opening your eyes to working with other professionals to help you become best in breed is so important and so effective in what you guys really preach in your practice.
We do. We really strive to be the trusted partner or one of the trusted advisors that a owner has. And there's a big difference. We as business owners, I had, my business, I had plenty of vendors. I had some practitioners, my CPA, my attorney, but none of them were really what I would consider strategic partners who were in there with me on a day in, day out basis to do that. And that's really what we mean about a trusted partner. If somebody who's there, they're regularly, they not only understand, what you do from an industry perspective, they actually understand what you do in your specific business. They understand you as the owner or your management team on what you're struggling with. And they try to be a guide. They try to be helpful. They may not be able to solve all your problems yourself. We can't solve every single problem that a business has by ourselves, but we recognize them. And if we develop that trust, then we can say, oh, hey, you may need to, think about bringing in, this advisor or this specialist or whatever it is, and start to fill in those gaps. And that is really important. As you said, you can feel kind of lonely. It's kind of like playing tennis. If you're playing singles, you're out there all by yourself, right? You have nobody supporting you when you're in a match. Same thing in business. I mean, unless you surround yourself with a team like tennis players do, and that support you, that help develop strategy, that point out your weaknesses, that bring in, a physiotherapist or a nutritionist, whatever, to help bring you in and perform better. It's the same thing here. And you have to have the kind of that trusted relationship where you're open to those introductions and those suggestions and somebody revealing your gaps, where you have holes in things. And that's kind of critical importance.
It's true. I mean, what I tell owners is you're not alone, and there's so many great resources out there. And it goes back to my original comment about being stuck. You got to be open-minded that there are other people out there that may have ideas and relationships and vendors that can be helpful to help you move things forward. So let's tie it all together before we jump into some questions here. We've got a couple questions. So Michael, I'll let you finish with this slide here.
Really the purpose of this slide is just to help build awareness, just like this webinar series, on whom you may need to bring into your camp, right? To be part of your team. Maybe not on a full-time basis for yours, maybe, more transactional in and out, or project-based, but there is a spectrum of specialists that you need at various times along your business to help improve whatever it is you do. We've thrown some examples out there, and I apologize to anyone who's on the webinar right now who I may miss their particular profession in all this. So you can't put everybody out there. Right. It's meant to give owners an idea of who we need to bring in and out over time. That's one step in the process. I'd say, the other thing is, how do you get owners to recognize that they need help? One of them is just this, bring it out. But going from recognition to implementation or execution is often a very daunting chasm to cross, because it's a lot. It could be a lot. And if owners don't know how to engage, not only engage with specific advisors, but actually make them work together, because a lot of times they're not all islands. Your CPA needs the information from your financial professional, and your wealth manager needs that from your taxes. I mean, that's some simple examples where they all need to work together. And a lot of times I see business owners get kind of daunted by all of that. And so if they're open to it, we help them organize that. Just schedule the meetings, bring people together, have them look at all the information, talk about the issues together, so they're all kind of working together. And a lot of times we wind up doing that with our owner clients, just to help them move the ball forward.
Truly, truly so vital. I mentioned earlier, I'm going to mention it again. Michael and I are both members of XPX Charlotte. It is a group of dedicated advisors to helping business owners have more optimal outcomes. So we talk about this all the time, and making sure you have the right advisors in the right seats at the right time is truly important here. I think we're up to questions. I went ahead a little bit there. There we go. I do have one question sent in. It says, Michael, thanks for the presentation. Really appreciate your comments. You've got me thinking. Question: how long before I want to go and exit should I begin to start working on these items that you've outlined? And I'm going to stop the share and let you give that in a little bigger voice here, Michael.
So the really simple answer is now, right? You should have done it, last week, last year, 3 years ago. But the sooner you can start, the better. This story I shared earlier with one of the prospective clients, I set their expectations. It's a minimum of 3 to 5 years to kind of institute all the changes, incremental changes we want to make, so that your business can be ready for a potential sale. It's just be ready for a due diligence, not necessarily even do that. But the sooner you can do it, the better, because I'll stress a point I made at the beginning of the presentation or the beginning of this discussion, is that being ready is just good business strategy. And the sooner your business is ready, it will just be operating that much better. You'll be generating more cash flow. You'll be more efficient. Your people will be more productive. They'll be more satisfied. All those things will actually help your business along the way, even if you're not contemplating an exit, even though you should be along the way. So,
well, that's a great segue, and one of some data that I get from some of the associations I'm in. The data shows that in 2021, and we're going to make this part of a webinar in the future, over 50% of transactions from 500,000 to 50 million. Think about this. Over 50% of people who sold their business were approached unsolicited by someone. And what does that tell you? It tells you that if you're not ready, you're not going to be getting the ideal amount when you exit. So as Michael just stressed, the time to start working on this stuff is yesterday. And that's really why, as we kick off this new year, we really wanted to get you creatively to think about these ideas conceptually, strategically, work on your business instead of in your business. We have other webinars dedicated on specific things to do, but the whole idea behind this is to really rattle your brain a little bit, get you thinking about some things, because these topics matter. They matter. They should matter to you. They definitely matter to the buyer. And just know that there's resources out there in the community to help you maximize the value of your business. I'm going to check the Q&A one more time here if we have any more questions. Michael, anything in closing you want to add here?
Yeah, I mean, besides just maximizing the value, a lot of times with these unsolicited inquiries, if you're not ready, it's just a flyby. They'll say, "Oh, these guys are not ready. Let's just move on to the next target." They won't even waste their time. You might miss an opportunity.
Yeah, it's a great point. Okay, last thing I'd like to share here. I started to earlier, but I'm going to do it again. I'm going to shrink us here. Next month. So first of all, here is how you can get in touch with Michael. If you fail to write this down, again, we'll make the PowerPoint or the video available to anybody. You can also reach out to me, Google Michael or myself. We'll get you Michael's contact information. But also next month, super excited, Brandy Milazzo, good friend and partner, managing partner of Ascension Law. We're going to talk about some legal topics that owners need to be thinking about well before they are ready to sell their business. So again, this series is contemplating your exit, things you need to be thinking about. Michael, this has been a pleasure for me. Really appreciate what you're doing, really, truly on behalf for business owners out there. You're helping people, and I know your experience has clearly formed what you're doing. And I know you've said to me, if I only knew now, back then what I know, or you know what I'm trying, if I only knew then what I know now, wow, I would have been that much more successful. But we're here to share, we're here to help everybody, and Michael, really appreciate your time and your energy.
Again, I appreciate you having me part of this thing. So
great. Well, thank you, everybody. Really appreciate your time this month, and look forward for an invitation for next month's webinar to continue our Contemplating Your Exit series. Thank you all very much. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.